why don't we start with Guns Out? Start with you and John Keys, right? You guys, longtime friends, but you've been a shooter for much longer. Well, he was a former Marine, right? But wasn't really into shooting outside of that until very recently, in fact, until the pandemic when he bought his first civilian gun. But you've got more of a background. You were a competitive shooter. You've been interested in firearms for much longer on the civilian side of things. Can you just talk a little bit about how you got into guns and then that dynamic between you and John?
Yeah, so I did a bunch of matches, some non-sanctioned matches. So they have official matches, IDPA, USPSA, 3-gun, 2-gun, et cetera, that are typically sanctioned by the governing bodies that govern competitive shooting. But you also have a lot of people in local areas. A bunch of shooters will get together. Sometimes you'll have gun organizations and gun clubs that will do their own non-sanctioned matches. And so I did a lot of those and had so much fun. Started training with some really skilled shooters who also shoot for some of the sanctioned entities. And so that was sort of my leeway into the competitive world. I've had some sanctioned matches and plan to do some more in the new year. I've kind of been all over the place, Stephen, man. So I haven't been able to really practice as much as I wanted to. I was supposed to do a sanctioned match in October, I believe, and I decided not to do it because I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. I hadn't been practicing the way I would really like, just because we've been so busy with Guns Out, unfortunately. But hopefully in the new year, I'll be able to carve out some better time to dedicate the necessary amount of time to dry firing, drawing from holster, moving while shooting, all of those things that are just really, really critical in competitive shooting, especially when you're doing USPSA, where time, speed, and accuracy is everything. But yeah, John and I started Guns Out, and it was so funny because I'll never forget this. John came to me with this idea. I had just moved back to the Northern Virginia area full time. I was living in New York part time for a show, a digital show that I was co-hosting for almost about a year and a half, almost. And once that contract ended, I came back full time. And John said, "Hey, man, I got an idea. How would you feel about starting a gun show together?" And I was like, "Oh, no, John, because Stephen, I have a media background, a lot of media training. I'm really picky about partnering with something in that space if they have no experience." And John said, "Well, let's just try it out. Let's just see what happens." So he ended up filming something that his wife had told him to film it. He showed it to me. He said, "What do you think?" I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool. We'll film a couple episodes." You were actually in one of the very first digital episodes that we actually filmed together. And once we saw that and we edited it ourselves, or John did, and it was like, okay, maybe this might be a thing. Maybe this could be an interesting idea. And so we started thinking about what would we focus on? How would we do this thing? We didn't want to be uber tactical. We didn't want to be uber competitive. And then we sort of decided, well, what about the folks in the middle? And that's a lot of the new gun owners. There are people who aren't tethered to one thing or another. They're new enthusiasts, or they're just new owners in general. And they're looking for places to find out knowledge about guns. They're looking to find out where can they go for training. They're looking for places that they can go to have a lot of fun, to just improve their comfortability with guns in general. And so we said, well, why not just start traveling the country, highlighting and capturing really, really cool places and really cool people in this space. Hence, if you look at our bio, we say Guns Out is attempting to humanize and normalize firearms culture through dynamic, entertaining, and educational content. And that sort of fit into our motto, which it's really, really cool, man. And so we've been all over the place, Stephen. So the opportunity came to have our content on ABC7 in the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and the suburbs of Maryland market. That's the 7th largest market in the country. And when the opportunity came, we jumped at it. And we had a couple episodes that aired. Then, unfortunately, the incident at the Capitol happened. And of course, once that happened, Stephen, just it put the brakes on a lot of things, as you can imagine. And the executives at the studio, the Sinclair Broadcast Group, which owns that ABC7 affiliate, stated, we just don't think now is the best time for a gun show. There's just a lot going on in the country right now. And we just don't think it's smart to just have something like this out when we don't want to incidentally encourage someone to do something harmful to others. We didn't like it. It was hard. I think John got over it a little easier than I did. It was really hard for me coming from this space. I just expected a little more. I expected some ways for us to figure out how to keep going forward, because to have a live fire gun show on TV is something that hasn't happened, from my understanding, in decades. And so that was a really, really big deal, what we were attempting to accomplish. And within I guess a month of being on, it was over.